There is a lot of stuff in DBD, but there's also a surprising amount that's been removed too. Today we're looking over every single thing I could think of that got removed from Dead by Daylight. Hey everyone, and let's get into it. Decommissioned add-ons are add-ons that were once in the game but removed or temporarily removed for varying reasons. The most common reason is simply a rework or introduction of a new add-on, taking an old one's spot. It's a very long list of add-ons that are currently out of the game, and a bunch more that were briefly out of it. I made a whole video focusing on the most interesting of these decommissioned add-ons, that I'll link below. Moonlight Offerings were offerings that allowed you to change the lighting in the trial, and make it incredibly dark in some cases. It had multiple rarities and would get darker based on the rarity. These were removed due to the developers wanting more control over how the game looked, and how dark or light the trials would appear in game. This is a good change, I think, as cool as the offerings were. Dimmed and enhanced vision was a further removal of this type of thing. Originally, Lightburn and Shadowborn provided alterations to your visibility or screen brightness. One would make it clearer or brighter, and the other darker. This is odd, but is a fairly cool mechanic lore-wise. Ultimately a good removal though, and a needless downside for the dimmed vision. Bubba's masks were masks that showed him wearing the faces of the 4 original survivors. These were earnable by sacrificing the relevant survivor 25 times as Bubba. These were removed however due to controversy surrounding them, and with them being used in hateful ways to target and harass. It's good they got removed. The concept however of earnable cosmetics is definitely something I would like to see return. RPD isn't actually a playable map, at least not completely. When the Resident Evil chapter released, RPD wasn't 2 halves of the map, but instead a complete full version of it. It was removed I think mainly due to balance, but potentially also performance issues, with it being an incredibly large and detailed map. It was cool looking, but horrendous to play on, especially the upper floors of the library, if you remember that. Old Boons and the top floor of RPD library. Oof. Splinter Offerings were offerings that allowed you to play a killer you didn't own. This was great for testing out a character before you bought them, and also just let people try out characters they maybe couldn't afford yet or didn't want to commit to buying. I believe this was removed however due to hackers exploiting the offering to get certain killers with others' powers, and various things like that. Meme add-ons are a type of add-on for killers that will intentionally nerf the character in return for a BP bonus. These aren't all entirely gone, but with each rework and new character release they are not present, and haven't been consistently since the release of Sadako. This is a real shame because they were a fun alternate way to challenge yourself on a character. I understand they can take up a slot of an otherwise useful add-on, but I for one appreciate them nonetheless. Power, perk, and item interactions were cases where all of these things could in some way interact with killer powers. These are largely removed from the game now. Things such as toolboxes being able to sabotage trappers' traps, hags' traps being breakable by flashlights, artists' crow swarms being removed by flashlights also, and a bunch more. In fact, there's a whole short I made which basically covers all of these removals, which at the time were features. Which is great too, because now it's completely useless. Lightburn was a specific case of this and one of the biggest removals. Nurse and Wraith used to both be able to get stunned when a flashlight shone on them during their power usage. This was a fun little mechanic I think, and a nice secret almost that allowed you to counter them. Admittedly, for someone like Wraith, this could have been nerfed a bit to give him a better chance, but Nurse's was fine as is I think. Whilst I do understand the removal of other interactions, this one is one that could have stayed I think. Hook and trap breaking was something I mentioned briefly, but is worth covering a bit more. This was a thing that allowed you to permanently break both the hooks of the trial and trappers' traps by sabotaging them. Sabotaging was of course never removed, but permanently breaking something through sabotaging was removed. There were times before where you could break every hook on the map aside from the basement, which is just utter madness. Nowadays, can't do that. BP bonuses on perks are another thing not entirely gone, but something being slowly removed. Before we talk about that though, I'd like to talk to you about GFUEL. GFUEL is sugar-free, game-changing energy that is available in over 50 flavors, including some collaborations you'll surely recognize. My personal favorite at the moment is Dream Demon and its tart fruit punch flavor. GFUEL recently announced the brand new GFUEL Protein, which will be available in 3 different flavors. games. You can check this out and more over at GFUEL.com and use code AZHY at checkout for 20% off your order. Links below. This seems to be an ongoing process for the devs to remove perks and add-ons that provide a BP bonus. The main ones you probably remember that this happened to were both barbecue and chili, no longer providing up to a 100% bonus to BP gains, and We're Gonna Live Forever doing the same. I didn't like this at the time, but admittedly I do think it's good for perk variety, and BP is generally easier to earn and more abundant these days anyway, and you see way less barbecue and chili. That was in everyone's build before. FOV Perks were removed with the introduction of the FOV slider. This affected perks such as Shadowborn, which increase your FOV. Perks that contained an FOV relevant effect had these effects removed and replaced with something else, due to the FOV now being capped at the perk's original effect. Insta-Gens is referring to the possibility for generators to be instantly completed. This was removed with the rework of the brand new part add-on for toolboxes that allowed it. After this nerf, Insta-Gens have never been possible aside through bugs. Quick play is a feature that used to exist, which allows you to simply press the quick play button and get placed into a survivor or killer match. That was about it. According to the wiki, it was removed because no one really used it, which I think would be the case now too, to be honest. De-pipping was something that was recently removed, and it basically just stops you from moving down a perk level after achieving it, stopping a regression in progression rather than a progression in progression, if that makes sense. Flashlight clicking is something you could do before, allowing you to repeatedly spam the flashlight click button and make this annoying clicking sound. It was mainly used to be toxic, and I believe was removed due to potentially causing health issues, a good change. Hook grabs were removed to make late game standoffs fairer, I think, and to generally make these interactions a bit more enjoyable. Now you can guarantee an unhook, but will have to suffer a hit, although not a grab. Hatch grabs were also a thing at one point, and at a time when you couldn't shut the hatch, but could grab someone waiting at it. This meant you could wait at the hatch's killer, and would have to stand off with the survivor who was trying to jump in. These were eventually removed, and the hatch was reworked and shuttable. Special attacks working with perks is something that has been removed over time, with the biggest and most important case of this being the removal of Nurse's blink attacks counting as normal attacks and working with perks. She could originally use insta-down perks like Make Your Choice in conjunction with a blink attack and it would work. So that was a great removal. Less than 4 survivors in a trial was removed with an addition technically. Nowadays, if you or a teammate disconnects from a match, you'll be replaced by a bot. Before you just disappeared and the game went on with 3, 2 or 1 survivor, depending on how many people quit. These days are not possible anymore, aside through playing the trial normally to remove survivors. Stranger Things was at one point removed from the game, and I sort of want to mention it still because it was a huge deal, let's be real. It really hit everyone in the feels and was a whole ordeal. When this chapter was concealed in 2021, it was huge news, and even with the community appeal, it still got removed, which wasn't ideal. It's back now though, although technically there was still a casualty in the process, which was the temporary perk names that were implemented during the license's removal, as well as the icons. These names are now all gone, and we'll likely never see them again, along with the perk icons too. Hook struggling and wiggling button pressing was changed a decent while ago now. Before we didn't have these nice skill checks on both hooks and whilst wiggling, we instead had to slam buttons of A and D when wiggling or spam space when on a hook. If you missed the hook one, even very briefly, it could cause insta-death on hook. It was really terrible and very bad for keyboards and controllers. Spamming the spacebar button for like a minute and a half. Stretched resolution was something that allowed you to stretch out the game's resolution. This could be used for aesthetic purposes to alter the visual of your game to your liking. However, it was also used by many to give an unfair advantage, extending your screen to be able to see over certain loops you couldn't with a normal resolution. It's widely debated whether this was good or not, and it is a shame that the people using it to not cheat were affected by this too, but it was overall probably a good change. The old prestige system was removed in favor favour of the new prestige system. It's a whole lot better now. I do count this more as a removal over a rework because it did remove features such as all of your items being lost upon prestiging, where now you simply accumulate as you go. The cap is now 100 instead of 3 as well, and we get numbers instead of the numeral markings. Attack on Titan was removed with its cosmetics and charms available. It was in the game for around 1 year I think, and probably won't come back due to it being a cosmetic license. It brought along some new skins and some unlockable charms upon buying skins. There was also briefly a lobby screen and some music. The best part about all of these is definitely the music. Plague's ability to infect breakable walls was removed because it was useless. That one's maybe more of a rework, but I just thought it was funny. Hatch incremental spawning was a function the hatch originally had. Originally it could spawn as early as 3 generators remaining. This meant all 4 players could go through the hatch technically, so long as you had a key. It was really stupid and not fun at all. Nowadays the hatch is only present to the last survivor of the trial, a good change. Chance add-ons and perks are add-ons and perks that have slowly been removed over the years and would provide a chance to work. Add-ons and perks that only sometimes do what they're meant to. This was the case for perks such as Spies from the Shadows, which at one point provided just a 75% chance to work. An add-on example is Trapper's Old Honing Stone, which gave a 50% chance to put someone in the dying state. These are largely quite pointless, and I imagine were quite frustrating, simply adding substantial RNG on top of the game's already quite large inclusion of it. Rank-based matchmaking was how matchmaking used to work before the introduction of MMR. It would match you based on your rank in game, which was really just a display of how much you had played, and not skill. So issues would occur where someone who has simply played a lot could be placed with people who leveled fast due to being a good player. Originally you'd also only get a partial reset instead of going back to 20 every time. Lore is something that does get removed too, and we aren't just talking retcons, but entire lore entries that are unlockable and viewable during events. When the event ends, these are simply no longer available, removed from the game. That's pretty bad and does seem like a very unnecessary removal, especially because the lore in them is quite cool and relevant. Flavor text has been removed in some instances. For example, on keys they used to specify that they could open black locks. This always confused me before when I started playing because what's that? This actually refers to the hatch and its lock, I suppose. Things like this were removed for clarity. Considerably and other vague terms were also removed from the game. These terms used to be used in place of actual numbers for add-ons and perks. For example, instead of saying provides a 4% bonus to trap setting speed, it would say considerably increases trap set speed. It was very confusing and annoying for everyone, and a great thing to remove. Achievements have been removed over the years due to many of these other removals. Notable ones are ones that focus on hatch escapes and stuff like that. There's a whole bunch. So that's every removed thing I could think of. Did I miss something? Let me know down below.